Hey, everybody. It's Mike at Flex Radio, and it's sort of a surprise. Today's Monday, right? Broadcast, because last week was a bit of a change for, at least in North America. We had Canada Day on Wednesday, and a lot of Americans observed July 4th on Friday. And I have a guest today, Eric, 4 Zulu 1 Uniform Golf, who some of you may know because he's got a great podcast as well. And we're going to chat about, do we call it the Ham Radio Expo, Eric?
We call it the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo.
Okay, I have to get that right. And so I've asked Eric to join us. He's going to tell us about this expo. It's the first weekend of August. It's free.
It's free. It's August 8th and 9th. So it begins at 0100 hours Zulu. So for people in America, that might be August 7th, Friday evening.
Yep, and so and it's sort of I cautiously say a replacement because Dayton and Freedom didn't happen, but it allows us to have some sort of a collaboration event, and we're going to have. Well, tell us about it.
Sure. Do you want to start there with the Ham Radio Expo?
I didn't follow my own script, which we do. So Eric's been a ham for a while. So tell me what got you into ham radio. That's what I said I would start with.
So I was probably 12 years old. Which was probably over 50 years ago. And I grew up in Southern California. In Southern California in those days, in the 60s, I've said this on my podcast, which is the QSO Today podcast, that people used to work in their garage, or at least middle-class people used to work in their garage. They would, change the brakes on their cars, or they would do all this stuff. And my father had found a 66 VW Bug that had rolled and that somebody had parked in the neighborhood, and he bought it from the guy, and he decided to build a dune buggy. And so in the 60s, dune buggies were very popular, especially the ones with the fiberglass bodies. And so he bought a fiberglass body from a company called BF Myers. So he had a Myers-Manx dune buggy body, and we were building this dune buggy in the garage. So one night, this new neighbor comes down the street, and he wants to borrow a socket set. And of course, in my garage, we had all kinds of tools. And so I said, well, so what do you need the socket set for? He says, well, I have a Heathkit garage door opener that I'm building. And I thought, wow, I'm interested in electronics. I think a garage door opener in those days was a rare commodity, although they seem to be pretty ubiquitous now. And so I said, can I go see what you're doing? And so I went down there. And I helped him with his garage door opener. That ham was Gary Park's K6 uniform India mic, and Gary had a Tempo 1 in the front dash of his 60, it must have been a 68 Cougar with a 40-meter loading coil on the back. And I said, hey, what's this? And he says, oh, well, this is amateur radio. That's how it started for me. Gary took me to Henry Radio in Anaheim. That was another thing. And so it took a couple of years beyond that for me to actually get my license. I got my first license when I was in San Diego, going to the El Cajon Amateur Radio Club. It was at El Cajon in 1972 that I met, at the time, WA6HQH, who is now N6KR. He's the CTO of Elecraft. And so Wayne Burdick and I have been friends since 1972. That's my probably only claim to fame besides the podcast now. But I was licensed in 73. Been a general class licensee probably up until 2000 and maybe it was 2010. And then I took my extra class license in California at Gordo's house. He was very kind to, I was visiting America, and he was very kind to give me the extra class license, I think on the 26th of December. So the day after Christmas, I took it there. And so I'm now an extra class ham in America, WA6IGR. And I'm not on the air much. Unfortunately, I like repeaters and All-Star and all that stuff. So I kind of do that here. I've got behind this green blanket, which I use as my green screen, is my ham radio station, which is the original TS520 I've had probably for 45 years. I've got a Elecraft K2, which was my male bonding project with Wayne. And then there's also an IC 7300 back there, and a few commercial FM 2A radios that I use for All-Star and DMR. So that's it in a nutshell. Oh, I started in 2014. I started the QSO Today podcast, which is a 1-hour interview podcast where I interview old timers. At the time, I kind of felt that there was a need for an oral history of ham radio, at least since World War II. I've been very happy that I've been able to interview hams. The oldest, I think, is now, I think, she's W1YL, Ellen White. She's probably in her 90s now, still a 40-meter CW operator in the middle of the night. So if you ever catch Ellen talking to Japanese on 40 meters and early in the morning, that's Ellen, and I think Ellen's probably 92 now. So she's the oldest ham radio operator that I've interviewed. She was the first female commercial broadcast engineer in Hawaii just after World War II. So she has a great story. Wow. So I've been doing that for all these years. Since 2014, I've done 309 interviews.
I've only listened to a few of yours. There's just so many. I find there's so many podcasts out there. They're so informative, and now I guess because I'm a bit more in the industry, I'm listening to other things that aren't necessarily always related to the industry. But I'm fortunate to be, on with George once a month with Ham Radio Workbench, and we have a blast doing that. And he's got, his brain's always going and building boards and stuff. So we've got one of those coming up, and of course you're good friends with George as well, and. He's been great, but there's just so many of them, and they're all from you, Jason, and a whole bunch of people. Actually, you had all these wonderful people on about a month or two ago, 3 months ago.
Episode 300. I actually now I'm kind of a nut for QRP and building stuff, and so I had Asher Farhan, I had Hans Summers on, so that was a lot of fun. I had George on, of course, and Bill and Pete from the Solder Smoke podcast. I see. I'm looking at the chat, guy. I'm not supposed to look at the chat.
Okay.
Mike told me I wasn't supposed to look at it, but I see some of my favorite hams in there now. I see Scott Wright in there. I see Howard Shear in there. So thanks for showing up, guys.
Yeah, and then we didn't broadcast this. This is sort of like just we left Monday open, and we thought we'd go there. It's been an interesting hobby. I say this all the time, whether it's because of the Elmers that you and I had, that it was amazing what we know, and hopefully that you and I make a dent on some new hams. And now you and I know what we don't know. Took us a long time.
Yeah, no, that's true. It becomes very evident after 309 interviews what I don't know. On the one hand, I think I've learned more about ham radio and technology and stuff probably in the last 6 years of doing the QSO Today podcast than I did in the previous 44 years of doing the podcast. So I've been a ham almost 50 years now. So
you and I both, you're a year before me. So I laugh at your 520 because I think the TS 520 is 6146 final tubes. Is that right?
I actually have the 60. I have a spare pair of 6146s in the drawer here in case I ever burn those out, which probably isn't going to happen. But
now, would you know I used to throw out garbage cans full of those because I worked for IBM and NORAD, and those were our memory tube drivers, 6146W. So every ham that worked in NORAD or on the ANFSQ7 computer had loads of spare tubes, spare final tubes for everybody in town. And I lived in a small town called North Bay.
The good old days. In fact, I think the 6146 was also in the Motorola tube GGTs, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So they were very common VHF, UHF, PA tube as well.
So let's get going. So you had this vision. And
so I had this vision. So the fact was I was planning on going to Dayton, and I said on a recent podcast that I love the Dayton Ham Fest. I've only been once. It was like going to Mecca. It was like every ham has to go to Dayton in their life. Mm-hmm. But for me, Dayton was almost like, and I said this, that there was this great movie that Robin Williams starred in called Moscow on the Hudson, where he plays a Soviet immigrant. It was defecting. He was a circus actor defecting to the United States when they were touring America, and so he defects to the United States, And growing up in the Soviet Union, and where things at the time were probably relatively scarce, he goes into a supermarket in New York City, and he's going into the coffee aisle, and there's 100 varieties of coffee on the shelves, and he's looking at it, and his brain overloads, and he collapses and faints on the floor of the supermarket. And so for me, Dayton was like that. It was just like 3 buildings and 2 tents, and the racetrack with all of the stuff. It was just sensory overload. And as I tell people, I said I was there a Friday and half of Sunday, and I had time to talk to everybody in the aisles, and to wave at Gerald at Flex Radio, and wave at Wayne and Ellicraft, and that was all the booths I saw, the whole time. So I was planning on going to Dayton, and I had my hotel reservations made, and I usually wait and do the airline thing at the last, and all of a sudden the COVID-19 thing pops up, and I'm thinking, well, I guess I'm not going to go. So I didn't buy a ticket, and I canceled my hotel reservation. And then I see that Friedrichshafen is about to get canceled. I wasn't planning on going there, but Friedrichshafen is a good gauge of what's happening in the world. Then I started looking at the ARRL Hamfest website, and all of a sudden I'm seeing all these cancellations, and I'm thinking, well, how are hams going to survive without having any Hamfest, for the next year? So I started thinking about, well, if I was going to have a Hamfest, how would I do a Hamfest virtually? And so I saw that, Contest University was going to do it with Zoom, and that was great. I signed up for that, and I enjoyed the Contest University on Zoom. But I thought, well, how would we do it so that you could have everything? So you could have, an exhibit hall, and you could have a bunch of speakers, and you could have this live interaction between the hams at the same time. So I started looking at, well, do they do conventions online? And I found that there's a number of companies that, yes, they do convention platforms online that have all of these things. There's a large number of these companies, but they're all now so overwhelmed from the work that they've got because everybody was canceled that you couldn't get anybody to return your calls, or you couldn't get anybody to reply to your email. So finally, I narrowed it down to 2 or 3 companies, and I was able to actually get meetings with them. And so the one that I decided on was a company called V-Fairs, and they're kind of young entrepreneurs. They kind of gave us the look and feel that we wanted to have, and that's kind of how it started. And it kind of was like this little dust mite that turned into this snowball. And so now I've got 5 full-time people working on it with me. It's become an entrepreneurial endeavor. I've offered free tickets to everyone. I hope everybody comes. Because it should be a very interesting experiment. The convention platform looks like the real thing, and Flex Radio, thank you, Mike, and Lori. Flex Radio is a gold sponsor. We'll have, I think, 8 gold sponsors. ICOM, who is a primary sponsor of the QSO Today podcast, didn't hesitate for a second to become the platinum sponsor of the show, and they're great, and they're all the gold sponsors are being great, and they're actually it's the sponsors and the exhibit hall that's paying for this platform. And this platform is like renting a major stadium in a major city for a weekend for a rock concert. It's that much money, and so therefore the exhibitors are paying for it, and we're having this great party on August 8th and 9th, beginning at 0100 hours. And I see Scott is in here, and Scott Wright, K0MD, is doing the keynote speech. And I couldn't think of anybody better to do that for us than Scott. So that's in a nutshell, that's kind of how this all started. It's out of control. But we've already signed the contract for March of 2021. Because we think that that unfortunately COVID is here for a while, but I think that what we're going to find with this show is that a lot of the hams that will come are hams who are not active, or hams that never go to Hamfest, or hams that have never been to Hamfest. So we are hoping that this is a major opportunity to interest people. There's almost 800,000 hams in America that have licenses. The majority of them have never been on the air. So we hope that we'll create an opportunity for hams to get on the air and get on the air with us, and that there'll be a place for a virtual show in addition to the live shows that I hope will come back. I mean, I hope that Hamcation will come back. I hope that Dayton will come back. I hope, God willing, that we are in a position next year where we've got the vaccine and we've got the immunity, and we can venture out of our social distancing and once more, rub elbows with our fellow hams.
Yeah, it's Dayton is I don't know how many parts of the hobby. The hobby has so many hobbies within the hobby, right? And
That's right. It's a huge tent.
And you're going, that looks cool. Wow, that looks really cool. And then an hour and a half later, you're still at this booth. You spent a whack of cash, and you're into a new part of the hobby, and you bring it home. And I hear the story all the time. They didn't know it exists because the people that have this don't necessarily advertise in QSD or CQ or whatever magazine, and didn't even know it existed. And that's the beauty of the hobby. It's just, it's, I don't know, but electrons and a bit of RF. And I get caught even here at work assuming that everybody knows everything about everything, and so we spend a lot of time trying to help people out and educate them to say, to give them some facts to work with, not say, well, just plug it in here, it works. And I almost never give that answer. I like to give say, you want to plug it in here because the data flows through here, and this is all key. And sometimes it's overwhelming to some, but now you've got a whack of speakers lined up. No, I don't have my notes.
A huge whack.
It's like 80?
Over 70.
Over
70 speakers lined up and confirmed. I was.
We've got a month.
I was told I wasn't supposed to look at the chat comments, but to John Azara.
Oh, hang on.
John,
let me post.
I'm not very good at speaking short. I tell a long story. I'm a storyteller, John. So
get over it.
Get over it, John. Okay.
All in good fun.
No, but look, Ham Radio is a huge tent, and I think I could talk about some of the speakers if you want.
Sure, please.
So what we try to do is, one of the things that we've discovered on a virtual platform is that in a regular Hamvention forum, everyone's sitting nicely. The speaker starts talking. If the speaker isn't interesting, nobody's going to stand up and walk out because shaming and all this other stuff that could go on, feeling self-conscious about getting up and walking out. Unfortunately, with a virtual platform like this, anybody that's not interesting in the first few minutes the channel is going to get changed, and the person is going to go click on something else. So what we've asked all of our speakers to do is we've asked them to speak 20 to 30 minutes. We've asked them to talk like TED. We've even sent them some videos for them to be trained on so that they can talk like TED, get to the point very fast, work on one key idea, and develop that idea. 50 slides with a lot of fine print and bullet points is not going to cut it for this audience, I don't think. We have speakers who are going to submit videos instead of speeches as well. So the platform is open for this. Every speaker is going to be pre-recorded, so that there's no live speakers. And the reason for this is that we don't have control over everybody's internet. And we felt that it was important that we've got good speeches on the platform, so that if for some reason the internet in Podunk, Kentucky stops working when you're trying to give your speech, then we will not lose the speech. So we will have all the speeches onboarded on our platform 2 weeks before the thing opens up. However, we will have live Q&A afterwards. So there'll be a push message that pops up on the screen that says Scott Wright will be taking Q&A. Now, fortunately, Scott is off the hook as a keynote speaker because he doesn't have to do Q&A. But if he wanted to do Q&A, we could push a message out there, and in fact, he could do Q&A. But we've got the people like Joe Eisenberg, K0NEB, on kit building techniques. We've got let's see,
me.
We've got you, absolutely. We've got Eric Nichols from Alaska, KL7AJ, talking introduction to low frequencies. Again, we've got tracks for new hams, for operating. We're going to teach people how to solder. We've got Ward Silver, N0AX on grounding and bonding.
I've seen part of that.
essentials.
That's really good. In fact, that was another one of those. I know nothing about grounding. I thought I knew something. I know nothing. I know more now thanks to Ward. And I was able to sit with him one day at dinner. What an interesting person.
He is. He's a great person, and he was kind enough. He was one of the first ones actually to volunteer to give a speech.
Pretty funny too.
Now I live in a place that's all on limestone, so I keep thinking I have to dig a hole and drop a Jeep in there in order to connect, have a good ground under my house. But I'll find out from Ward whether that's true. But anyway, that's just a taste of and you'll know all the names as soon as we post the names the next week or so. You'll know all the names of the speakers.
I've seen the interface because Lori and I've got work to do this, and it's pretty intricate. We have to go through our booth, like a regular booth, and design our booth and put our posters here and this size and that size. And I did say, hey, can we get that avatar to look like Matt? Maybe, can we? But
well, this look, I'll put it right out there. This is the first time this has ever been done in amateur radio. It's the first time it's ever been done by this company in this scale. To their sorrow, I'm an amateur radio operator, so I've already been all the way through all their back end and their front end. They want to give it to me like every week. They want to have a new topic for me to learn about, but I've already been all over their platform, and so there are things that they're not going to be able to do for us. So they won't be able to give us avatars that are personal this time. But in March, when we do this again, then hopefully we'll have antennas on the cars out in front of the convention center. Well, maybe our avatars will look a little bit more like ham radio operators and less like young people from Starfleet Command. We'll see. I'm supposed to get a sample of the avatars tomorrow to see what we can put in and to make it look more real. I jokingly say we want over 50 years of age, a little heavy, suspenders, baseball hats, handy talkies in the pockets. So we'll see what they can do for us.
That's true too. So I thought it's going to be great. We have a lot of work to do with it as well to get ready. And we've of course been busy with the shutdown of our community. Not our fault. We just got Eric. I think you heard part of the story with our community provider giving us 3 weeks notice. So we've been scrambling doing that. And I've had several emails. I should say it here. This is not a free service. We actually pay them a whack of cash a month for this service. So, and to have them disappear, brought us into a fair bit of work and more cash and infusion. So, which is fine. It's no big deal, or it is a big deal, but we'll get there and hopefully we'll have it up. And I think we've saved most of the, we're able to export most of the data and be able to import it into the new tool. And it's more than just an email list, because we use this as front end as, for support and whatever. But I think what you're doing is great. I know, I'm sure you had a few sleepless nights in the first month or so. And
I have a few. Look, I'm 10 hours ahead of California, so where I am. So that means I spent a lot of nights until 3 o'clock in the morning working here. And then I've got the dogs on top of me at 6 o'clock because they have to go out. So I'm running sleep deficit, at this point.
I promise the next meeting I book with you, I'll get up late or early for the 2:30 call, because he has a wonderful booking tool where you get in and it says all these times are available and it shows it in my time zone, which is Eastern. So I applaud you for doing that. Certainly made it easier. I come from a career of worldwide support, so it's not a big deal for me but I can see it making it very easy for other people. You want people to pre-register. How do they do that?
So if they go to qsotodayhamexpo.com, qsotodayhamexpo.com, there's a button for pre-registration. Now there's an incentive. The platform is gamified, meaning that you get points. Well, first of all, you have to opt in. So please opt in. That means that when you opt in, it means that that you allow the exhibitors to contact you after the event. And this is very important because the exhibitors are, of course, using this event as a way to sell product. Flex Radio wants to sell radios. ICOM wants to sell radios, and that's the way it should be. That's why this is free. So the platform is gamified, which what that means is as you go through the platform and you download videos or you engage with the representatives in the booths, you look at their content, you look at their videos, you download their collateral, then you are getting points. Now, I used all prime numbers for the point system because I was trying to avoid having anybody, be tied for first.
Mm-hmm.
But the sponsors are being very generous, and they're putting prizes up on the system. And the way that you win prizes is the guy with the most points wins. So, and there's a board called a leaderboard, and that leaderboard will list the names in real time as they are going through the platform. So as you're going through the exhibit hall and you're downloading webinars from the speaker hall, and we've got 5 speaker tracks, then you can go to the leaderboard and see where you are in terms of how you're doing in terms of points. So at the end, at about hour 46 in the 48 hours of the live convention, then we will freeze the leaderboard and we'll announce the winners. And the winners of the prizes will be based on the retail value of the prizes. So the guy with the most points will get the most expensive item that's in there. So far, the prizes that I see so far is I see there's a KX2 in there from Elecraft. We don't know what all the other people are going to put up. Rig Expert has a couple of antenna analyzers. So there'll be some really cool prizes, and there'll probably be a lot of swag. So I think there's going to be lots and lots of prizes that'll be awarded, some cups, some pens, but there'll also be some big stuff too, like some rigs. And that should be fun. And then what we're going to do at the end of that, then the system goes on demand for 30 days. So our convention will be open all the way from 30 days after August 9th. And then you can come back in and the leaderboard will be fresh and you can go through the whole thing again. And there'll be a set of prizes for the end of that 30 days. And the idea is that we hope to maximize engagement by all the hams with their free tickets, that they'll spend some time and they'll look at all of the videos that might interest them and that they missed, and that they'll spend a lot of time in the booths looking at what the exhibitors have put in their booths. So that's kind of the reason to get and you get extra points for getting that early registration. So if you get that ticket before July 24th, then I think you get a fair amount of points for being an early register.
Cool. So you got to do a 48-hour ham fest, for lack of a better term, but you got 30 days to pull it off, which means you can get sleep in between.
Which means you potentially could win, prizes in both things. I don't know. Maybe we should write rules. Maybe we should leave it to the peanut gallery that's putting messages up. Should we allow someone who wins in the 48 hours to win in the 30 days? That's a good question. Never had that question before.
I have an idea. I'll tell you offline.
Okay.
Maybe I'll take some thought with that. Well, that's really great. And I'm amazed to see the vendor all the vendors that have jumped on board as well. And thank you for taking the lead on this. We certainly thought it was pretty cool. And we're looking forward to it as well. And by the way, so we're going to actually have our staff available from Flex like we would at Dayton. And it's a good time to we haven't quite got the list of volunteers voluntold yet, but show up. So it is possible you could end up talking to Eric or Steve, or Tim or Ken or any part of the engineering team. And I always loved it long before I started working here when I'd go to Dayton and meet up with Eric and Steve and others and Gerald, who are just wonderful people and very, very incredibly knowledgeable. And I throw some ideas at Steve and he'd go, yeah, we already thought of that. That's a great idea, but here's why it really doesn't work. And you'd listen to him and he goes, you're absolutely right. Because you don't think about it works in my little silo, but it may not work for how you may consider it. And so, but we're going to go down this way. And wonderful, creative minds they are. So
Well, one of the things that we're going to do is, because we're starting this at 100 hours on August 8th, which is Zulu. So, since the exhibit hall will be open for 48 hours straight, those companies like Flex Radio that may have have distributors in other countries. Those distributors could take office hours, while the rest of the people in California are sleeping. So, or in the United States are sleeping. So there's an opportunity to actually find people in the booths if they happen to be distributors that are in Europe or EMEA or Australia or something like that. So that's always a possibility as well. You may find somebody in the middle of the night, manning a booth because they're taking the booth hours during their regular business hours.
Or somebody who can't sleep on board.
Or people that, and I find that's true. That there are a lot of night owl hams that they should be in bed, but they're actually on the air.
Those are called low band operators. So.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Eric, that's awesome. We're looking forward to it. Anything else you want to add? And we'll put the ribbons on this and let everybody go back. I don't know if you know, but here in the Northeast, Canada, US, it has been, hot for us, which is 30 Celsius during the day because it's always humid. But I looked at our 14-day weather forecast and it just shows sun. And I'm not complaining, but usually we get these things that go on for 3 or 4 days, and then we get a cold front come through and it gets chilly and it builds up again, and it's not breaking. And yet my friends out in the West Coast, Calgary, Alberta, it snowed.
Already.
Oh yeah,
this late in the season.
Oh, this early. It should be summertime for them, right? So, but anyway, so yeah, I might be up if I can't sleep because it's too warm because of where I'm staying in the summer. There's no air conditioning, so I'm getting used to getting acclimatized, I guess. But
so I'm going to actually ask you to take the period. I see that you put QSO today.
Yep.
So put a QSO today without the .hamexpo.com.
All one word. Got it.
All one word. Yeah.
So nobody told me it didn't work. So.
Yeah, I don't know whether I have the Ham Expo. I somebody gave me advice to register a lot of domains that would all take you to the same place.
They're close. Oops. Let's do this one.
There you go.
Okay.
That'll get you there.
Yeah, you may have to invest another $20 in another DNS entry or something.
There you go.
I don't know.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks.
Michael, it was a pleasure. It was nice to see all the people in the chat. I hope that they'll listen to the QSO Today podcast. I let other people tell the stories there. So for people that are concerned that I speak too much, what I do in the QSO Today podcast is I actually edit myself completely out except to ask questions. So because I think that everybody wants to hear the speaker, not me.
Everybody, and so I'll be on with George probably later in the month, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this as well. So from
I hope so. Yeah,
Workbench. So we have a breakfast meeting here in Ontario every Saturday. He actually joins us, which is sort of nice. So
is that right on Zoom? Is that a Zoom meeting? Yeah. That's a great idea.
That's great. Well, 73, everybody.
73, Mike. Thanks so much.
Take care.